Bless us as we come together as your children today to discuss the business of this country. Guide us in all that we do. Help us to make informed decisions. And at the end of today's meeting, we may do what is best for this country, Jamaica, land we love. Bless those who are on their way and help them reach here safely. For these and all other mercies we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Member Guy. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Apologies for absence for Member Enriquez.
Okay, thank you. Any other? That's the only one?
I don't know.
Could we, Madam Clerk, just send out the Zoom link by email, so if any of the members wish to join via Zoom, they can do so. Members, we have a lot before us today. There are new documents that have been sent us since the last meeting, plus the continuation of the examination of the internal auditor's report of the Auditor General's Department. We have the minutes. Everybody get a chance to look through the minutes. They're very long, very detailed minutes.
No, I haven't.
You haven't had a chance? I also had a chance to go through it. You have any corrections, member?
Hello. Chairman, yes, as you said, the minutes were very detailed and long, but on page 3 of 10, the 4th line down, assess should have been assessed. Would
3 of 10 at the top?
Page 3 at the top, 4 lines down from the top.
The auditor would have assessed instead of assessed. Okay. Right. Okay.
And the other one I found, Chairman, was on page 5, the first line. The department had a document that spoke to their continued efforts for business continuity, but it should be couldn't.
Could not, recall.
Could not.
Yes, the not should be included. Could not. Okay.
Apart from those, I haven't found any other, Chairman.
Okay. Could I invite you to...
So moved.
So moved. Seconded. Any other members? Okay, I'll second it. Any matters arising from the minutes, members? If there are none, I just want to read the action sheet arising from our last meeting, which is before you. Did you circulated them, Rosie? You should have it. Is that just a back and forth, no? We have any extras?
Chair, I have a query of your chair.
Yes, go ahead.
For clarification.
Yeah.
I have noticed there's a particular paper that is carrying story on the proceedings today, and generally I want to ask, when there are matters that are being discussed here, I have no issue with the newspaper or the journalist who wrote the article. Where my issue is it that members, persons who appear before us and we request certain information, is it that they should discuss it with the press prior to coming back to us with that data? I don't know. I am very new to these proceedings elsewhere, I know person ought not to discuss, especially requests made by a committee of this nature to anyone. So I invite you to also look and see if it is in order.
Well, I saw the report. Like you, I was seeing the information for the first time. I don't know, the challenge is I don't know how it got into the paper, right? And that's the issue, because it's not attributable to a person or a set of individuals. Yes, we requested some information at the last meeting, and I expect that information would be furnished to us today. But I would have preferred if we had heard it here prior to seeing it in the newspaper, but I don't know how it got into the newspaper, because there's no attribution to any individual. Big Rob, turn off your mic. Turn off your mic.
But Chair, I thank you for that particular clarification, but the answer that I'm seeking is, I'm not, as I said, I'm not stating, because like you, I don't know who would have provided the information. But in general, I just want to know if it is permissible or not for when this committee requests further information, if it is a matter to be discussed with the media before it gets here. I just want to know procedurally what should happen.
I don't know if there is a specific standing order, but I would say certainly my view would be that the matter should be discussed here first, right? But again, the challenge I have is, in the absence of an attribution, it's difficult to determine how it got out there. But I'm just saying, my view would be, for good order, that it should come here first. It is a public meeting, and then it can be reported. But I don't know how it got out into the media. But we have it as an action item, and it is one of the issues to be discussed when we get here, when we invite in the members. So just going through the action sheet, members, the first action related to the NIF audit report and the Canadian Farm Work Program. That follow-up report was sent via email, and I think everybody should have received that. The second one related to the issue you just raised. I expect that we'll get the answer when we invite in the Auditor General and her team. The third related to the draft documents. Documents were submitted to us via email, and then the auditor, the internal auditor, has also sent his report of the document sent to him. That wasn't sent by email. This is, just so we can follow, that this is a 2-page report sent by the internal auditor. Yeah, it was brought to the committee this morning, so we wouldn't have gotten that via email before. The fourth issue, we will hear from the Auditor General about the IT officer. The fifth, the internal auditor to review the documents. As I just said, we have received a report from him. And the last one, again, we will hear from the internal auditor whether the documents on the scope of the audit, whether that had been sent to the Auditor General. So we intend to go through all these action items when we invite in the team from the Auditor General and the internal audit team.
Chair, are we going to invite the Chief Internal Auditor's team here first?
Well, I was going to invite in everybody. I was just going to invite in everybody. I don't know that we need to do it separately. And I think we can invite them in now. Morning, team from the Ministry of Finance and the Auditor General's Department. Mr. Dillon, could I invite you first to just introduce your team? Use the mic, use your mic, please. We have to speak a little more loudly, or take off the mask if you.
Good morning, members. Good morning, colleagues. My team today consists of myself, Richard Dillon, Chief Internal Auditor, Annette Collier-Murray, Audit Manager, Kyra Jackson, Audit Manager, and Garfield Clark. I think he went to the restroom just now, so he'll be here shortly.
Ms. Blake, could you introduce the team from the Ministry of Finance?
Right. Hope Blake, Deputy Financial Secretary, and beside me, Sasha Lawrence Rose, Head of the Internal Audit Directorate.
Thank you. Madam Auditor General, could you introduce your team?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning all. My name is Pamela Monroe Ellis, Auditor General. Beside me, I have Mr. Adrian McNeil, Director in ICT. Accompanying me today is Deputy Auditor General Carolyn Lewis, Deputy Auditor General Gail Lou Lim, Deputy Auditor General Marlon McAdam, Deputy Auditor General for Corporate Services Owen McKnight, Principal Auditor Aislinn Cooper, Principal Auditor Christopher Hare, Gervais McLeod, Senior Director Human Resource Management and Administration, and we should have joining us virtually, she's on screen, Georgia Gale, Director Finance and Accounts, as well as Shamar Richards, Chief Internal Auditor, and Audra Williams Brown, Principal Auditor for Information Technology. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Madam AG, before we go into the substantive matters, we have received a number of documents, some from your department, some we got via email, but we also got a hard copy which was provided earlier today. Could you just tell us what is in this package, which came from your department?
Which package is that?
You're not aware of it? No?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, what it is just a compendium of the appropriation accounts. The certified appropriation accounts I see included is the appropriation accounts for 14-15, 13-14, AUGD response, and information on the relocation of the department from Waterloo Road to Knutsford Boulevard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Dillon, we got your 2-page report, which would be your assessment of the documents which were sent to you by the Auditor General's Department. Okay, thank you. All right, Madam AG, when we left the last meeting, there were some actions which we're going to just go through first, and then we will take the report from the internal auditor. At the last meeting, you had indicated you would come back to us to provide an explanation for your absence from the exit interview. Could you provide us with that,
Yes.
please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to
Chair, before, may I, with regards to the matter we were discussing earlier, I just want to bring it to the attention of the Chief Internal Auditor and his team, and the Auditor General and her team. There is a we had requested some information from you, Madam Auditor General, and having requested it, we hope that that information would have come to us before it reached the media. You're aware of it being in the media with regards to the point of where were you, or to give an account why you were not at the entrance meeting and the exit meeting. Only this morning in the paper, we are reading the answer, or the alleged answer. Were you interviewed? Did you communicate with the media with regards to the answer, the question that we had asked you?
Mr. Chairman, I'm aware that there is an article in today's paper. I had no interview with the media. I was asked to confirm the date of the exit interview, which was January 29th, and that was the extent of what I was asked. I was asked nothing else. I provided no additional information.
So you spoke to the media with regards to just the date. That's what you are saying to us.
I was contacted, and
Yes.
I was asked if I could confirm the date of the exit interview as the 29th of January, and I confirmed it. That's the extent of my discussion.
Madam AG, did you get an opportunity to read the article?
I read snippets of the article, Mr. Chairman. Well, through you, Mr. Chairman.
And would you agree with me, therefore, that based on the article, the details of the article, it is good reason that we would be concerned, because based on the information in the article, it seemed to have come from your office.
No, Mr. Chairman. I see nothing in that article that would suggest that information came from my office. I cannot be asked to answer for a Jamaica Gleaner article, Mr. Chairman. I think it is best that the editor, that the journalist be contacted and an inquiry made as to how he came by his information. Because what I do know is that information was provided that I was not aware of.
All right, Member Sibley's.
Chair, May I? Madam AG, I am not, with all due respect, Madam AG, I am not asking you questions which you can't answer. I'm not asking you any question which only the journalists would know. So your response a few minutes ago really was not necessary. In that, I asked you, would you be of the view?
Member Sibley's.
Would you be of the view that the question would come from, and you answered it? Okay?
Member Sibley's.
So I just don't want you to think that I want to ask you, I'm ascribing anything. It's just that when we have these proceedings, right, and there are requests made, we would like to get these answers here first and not to be reading it elsewhere.
Thanks.
Member Sibley's, let me
Thank
just say, when you had raised it before the members came in, and I said the challenge I had, there was no attribution to any particular source. The Auditor General has said she has not provided that information, so I don't know that we can go further on this point. Specifically, what I would ask the Auditor General to do is to provide the answer which we asked, so we can get the answer from her.
Sir Chair?
Yes, Member Miller.
I think Member Sibley's question is in line. I hear what you have said, Sir Chair, but the Auditor General stated that she was contacted. So I think in terms of probing for various answers, Member Sibley's question was in line.
I didn't say it was out of line, but an answer was provided. The Auditor General said she was asked to confirm the date, but she gave no other information. So I'm saying I don't know, in the absence of any attribution to a source, that we can go further with probing this particular issue.
Chair.
And what I would ask the Auditor General to do is provide us with the answer.
Chair, with all due respect to you, Mr. Chairman, I am of the view that I'm here to ask questions, not questions that are out of order, but questions that are in order. We did discuss the matter earlier, and I agree with you that the article did not ascribe anyone, and that is why it is important for me to ask the question. So to say because the article does not ascribe to anyone mean that we should go no further. We should just, I don't agree with you.
No, but member,
Thank you.
Member Sibley's, you have asked the question. I didn't stop you from asking the question. An answer was provided. The Auditor General answered.
Sir
I'm
Chair,
just saying,
I get the
one
feeling-
second, Member Miller, 1 second. I did not stop you from asking your question, but an answer was provided. So I'm saying, having gotten an answer where the Auditor General has acknowledged, she confirmed the date, she has said she had no further discussion with anybody in relation to the article. I'm just saying I don't know how further we can go. Member Miller.
Sufficing to say, Sir Chair, I'm getting the feeling that we're somewhat curtailed in our questioning from you. I'm getting the feeling as well, I know Member Sibley's, in my view, might have had other questions to ask, but I think you took it on yourself and decided that, listen, you're satisfied with what was said, and because of that, no more questions. And as Member Sibley's stated, that we are here to ask questions, and would want you, Sir Chair, to give us an opportunity to explore the issues and to ask questions as best as possible.
And Member Miller, I don't think anybody could accuse me as chair here of preventing members from asking questions.
Yes, Chair.
No, I am
Chair?
saying, no, allow me.
I want to point to standing
No,
order
Member
34.
Member Wilson, I'm on the floor. I acknowledge everybody. Dear Member Charles is before you. Member Heroy Clark is before you. I will allow everybody to speak. I did not curtail or say he couldn't ask the question. He asked a question, and an answer was provided.
Yes, Chair, I just want...
No reason to continue. That's what you said, you know. Because you answered the question.
Because
so I was the one who accused you, and I'm sure other members feel the same way, even the member who was asking the questions.
So, Chair, I want to point out that last week, a point of order was raised by myself, and it was shot down by yourself. And I took the time, as a new member, to appraise myself of what the standing order says. And from what the standing order indicates, you're out of order to shoot down my point of order. And I want to put it on record that as a new member, I would have expected as a senior member of Parliament and someone who sits in the chair that you would have allowed the correct procedures to follow. And when I read the standing order and I realized that you shut down my point of order without reason, I was quite peeved. So at this moment, I want to say your management of the overall conduction of this committee is going to be put into question. You're somewhat losing the confidence of people like myself and other young members like Member Miller. So I would want to point it out, Chair, that I don't want it to happen again. When I place my point of order, I would want it to be acknowledged.
Let me just say, members, we have 12 members or 13 members who are here. I allow members, once they raise their hands, to ask questions. I allow members to go even further when they raise points. But I also have a responsibility to manage the meeting in a particular way, right? And there are members here who have been given a lot of latitude in terms of the questions that they've been allowed to ask, uninterrupted by me, right?
So, Chair, it's not you allowing latitude.
Again,
we are
Member
here,
Wilson, Member
we are
Wilson,
here
Member
to
Wilson,
carry out an inquiry, and it's not
Member
about
Wilson,
allowing us. If we find that the
Member
question
Wilson,
are leading to a particular place,
Member
we will
Wilson,
pursue that place, Chair.
Member Wilson, again, I allowed you to speak. I want to be allowed to speak as well. Members are allowed to ask questions uninterrupted. There has to be, though, a management of the proceedings of the meeting, which I have responsibility for. And I believe there's a balance that has to be found. And I have allowed members to ask many, many questions. Once it is done, once you raise or acknowledge, I acknowledge you. And I allow members, every single member inside here who has, right? Every single member. But I also have to manage the proceedings because we have agenda items in front of us. Okay. And I have interrupted.
Are we supposed to take it that because of efficiency, you are not allowing us to ask the questions?
No, but that is not true.
Right, so
again,
what you have to do
true.
is allow the questions to pursue, because we are trying here to ensure we have accountability and transparency in government.
Everybody has the same objective.
But they don't appear that way, Chair.
No,
that is why I'm saying to you, because when you try to curtail the questioning, that is where we have a challenge.
And I'm saying everybody has the same objective of allowing an inquiry so we can get to the facts.
So, Sir Chair, moving forward, am I of the view that you'll allow us time to ask our questions?
I have no issue in terms of the time. What I have to manage, if we are asking questions over on the same points, if answers are given, right, and we keep asking the same questions, then I have a responsibility to intervene, but I don't stop people from asking their questions.
So, Chair, when you said that there's no need to continue, was it that I was asking the same question over and over, in your opinion?
All right. Members, just allow me to hear what is being said because it is providing some clarity to the issue that you asked. I am being told that the Gleaner contacted the Parliament yesterday and asked the Parliament Yes, the Gleaner contacted the Parliament yesterday and asked the question why the PAC meeting, why the PAC meeting was shifted from January 28, 2020 to January 29, 2020, and could you also indicate why the PAC meeting was not held on January 29? And was an
Chair, may I make a proposal that we continue on that matter next time, because...
No, I think, no, let me just deal with the matter, because I believe there's an explanation here from the Parliament, which is that in response to a query from the Gleaner, the Parliament responded and indicated why the PAAC meeting held on January 28, 2020 to review the second supplementary estimates. The PAAC did not complete their deliberations on the 28th and had to do so on the 29th in the time that the PAC meeting was originally scheduled. And they also provided a schedule attached for that week, which was sent of the PBC recording of the PAAC meeting. And then the final question that was asked by the Gleaner of the Parliament, could you also check for me if the Auditor General's name was signed as attending the meeting of January 29th? And the Parliament responded by confirming that the Auditor General had signed and had attended the meeting. She was in the building for the meeting of January 29th. So I'm doing this in response to the query, because this is new information that none of us had, that the Gleaner contacted the Parliament and got information from the Parliament, which probably contributed to the article that we would have seen this morning.
Thank you for that, Chair.
Very well, Chair.
Before, Sir Chair, can the Auditor General tell the committee as to who from the Gleaner contacted her,
Mr.
time
Chairman,
and when?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to provide that information. I generally do not provide information at the committee when names are asked. If the member wants to know, then I guess a letter can be written and I'll provide the information. But as I say too, I believe that you can also contact the Jamaica Gleaner for that information.
Chairman,
Member
let us move
Cousins.
on, Chairman. Let us move on.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order.
All right, can I hear the point of order, member?
Parliament supersedes all court. This is a final court. And when members that are employed to Parliament is brought before Parliament to answer question, we expect to get the answer. When Madam Auditor General is going to say if a letter is written, then she will find it necessary to answer. Cannot sit. He can't sit. We are here presently, right here now, and we ask a question. If Madam had said to us that she is unable to answer now and she will seek the answer and then furnish us with it, then fine. But what Madam is doing is simply casting a lot more darkness and shadows over the questions that are being asked. Leaves us to believe, in my opinion, that there's something that is so erroneous that it cannot be said, or she don't want to share. But Mr. Chairman, again, PAC, chaired by you, we are here to get answers. And I'm going to ask that you use your chair. If it so be that you guide the Auditor General as to how PAC committee meeting proceeds and what is expected of the members and also those who are invited here to give answers.
And Member Clark, I would say this, before you go, Member Miller. In terms of the questions that have been asked of the Auditor General, I believe the Auditor General acknowledged that she was contacted by the Gleaner, and she confirmed that she gave a specific date. All right? The Auditor General has answered and provided some additional information, which we asked for last week. The member has asked about a specific who from the Gleaner contacted her. I don't know if it is within the remit of the committee to get into that level of specificity, right? Versus an acknowledgement that yes, she was contacted, but we got some additional information which would have given us some greater context and clarity as to what would have been the source of the article today, which was the concern expressed by Member Sibley's at the outset. I don't know if going into the name of a reporter is going to get us further, right?
Sir Chair, it's the same thing we discussed a short while ago, right? The same exact thing we discussed a short while ago. It's not in your purview, Sir Chair, with all due respect, to answer that question. A question was posed, and I've seen a trend from last week where the Auditor General's pronouncement that she's not going to answer certain question. And Sir Chair, if you allow that to happen, we will set up bad precedents. So that means it doesn't make sense where you're asking the Auditor General anything, because you can say at any time that she's not going to answer.
Chair, may I?
Chairman, I think the critical question or point to be made here is, what is the probative value of asking the Auditor General who she spoke to? If she prefers an answer to that, can we summon that person here? No. So there's no probative value in asking that question. It is important, Chairman, we understand that we're operating under time constraints. And we need, Chairman, allow me.
No, on a point of order.
Chairman, we will not be sitting here until 2 or 4 in the evening. The point, Chairman, is this. Keep quiet and listen, man. The point, Chairman, is this. We must ask relevant questions and questions that are pertinent, right? Chairman, as far as I am concerned, what is happening here, right, is us skirting around the real issues. And I'm asking the members, let us get to the point, ask relevant questions, pertinent questions, questions that have probative value, so that we can get the business of the PAC done today. Thank you.
All right, member,
Chair.
hold on,
Chair.
hold on, Chair. Member Wilson. Wilson.
Yes,
Member
Chair.
Wilson, hold on. I'm going to acknowledge Member Guy, Member Charles, right? Member Guy, Member Charles. Those are the members I'm acknowledging.
Chairman.
Comrades, my apologies. My apologies. Members,
Chairman.
Members, please. Members, please. Members. Let's conduct ourselves with a decorum. Members.
Chairman, that's a breach of the point of order to utter political inferences in the House of Parliament.
Breach of what?
You cannot be saying comrade in this
this parliament, sir.
Chairman.
Member, I acknowledge what I said and I corrected myself to say members. Okay? Member Guy.
Chairman, thank you very much. I've listened, Chairman, to everyone in this chamber, and I agree with the point made by the member from Clarendon Southwest in terms of the probative value. I disagree with him, however, in terms of time constraint. The reality, however, Mr. Chairman, is that as has been a practice in the past, and even when the AG presents report on officers in the ministry, ministries, departments, and agencies in the annual report, no names have come to this parliament. I have sat on this PAC since 2002, when the predecessor to the current AG did his report, Mr. Strawn, to this PAC. And on no occasion have any of the committee meetings been blessed with the names of any of the officers who have been part of the missteps in terms of the reports. What is interesting, however, is that newspapers, and not only this one in question this morning, but others have gone further. And in fact, there was a report that came into this PAC some months ago, I think in the life of the last parliament, that spoke to some matter that relates to the CDF and some allocation. And it was the newspapers that went and dug up further information as to what was what. So to ask the AG at this point, who was it from the Gleaner who requested or who she spoke to, does not have any probative value. And to what extent would the members of this committee need that information for? If the reporters in this country, and we have accused them in the past of not being investigative reporters, if they have started on a route now, or some, to become investigative reporters, why is it that we are, as this committee, seeking to determine who was it who spoke to the AG on this particular matter, who called her on this particular matter, who called the Ministry of Finance on this particular matter, for that matter, who called whomever? The reality is that, yes, someone from the Gleaner called. The AG has declined to give the name of the person, as has been the practice for any discussions here. And I don't see, Chairman, any reason why we should, and it is my view, I'm not chairing this meeting, why we should pursue the matter anymore.
Member Charles.
Good morning, everyone. Chairman. Mr. Dillon, I have two questions.
Hold on, Member Charles. I wanted to just, you're going to which report now?
No, it's just, it's a similar line, just a
Okay,
question.
okay, all right, go ahead.
Mr. Dillon, were you or your team, or anyone on your team, contacted by the media after our last meeting?
No, member. No.
Thank you. So no one on your team was contacted. Okay. And my second question is, when scheduling your entrance and your exit interviews, do you communicate with the agency or whomever you are auditing and decide on a time and date? And how do you communicate? Do you communicate by email, by phones, or do you just set a date so that no one has the opportunity to say if they can make it or not? I just want to know what is your procedure in setting your entrance and exit interviews? That's all.
So our procedure is to communicate a tentative date. However, the entity has the opportunity to indicate that it is convenient to them. So it is a situation where we have that dialogue to come to a date that is convenient to both parties. And that was the procedures that was applied in this instance.
Follow-up question. PAC meetings are normally on Tuesday mornings, or is that just this year since I'm a new member of parliament? That's a question to the chair. Because everyone knows when PAC meetings are scheduled. So it would be inappropriate to schedule an entrance or exit meeting with the Auditor General on a day that she's normally at the PAC meeting. Am I correct? Okay. Thank you.
Members, having heard the views of a number of members on the specific question raised by Member Miller, my view is that I'm not going to insist that the Auditor General answer that specific question about who the reporter was, and that we proceed with the report which is before us and the questions that have been asked of the Auditor General in the report from the last meeting, and that the Auditor General proceeds to answer the questions which were there from last week. Member Sibilis.
Thank you, Chair. So, since we are on this point with regards to the entrance and exit meeting, I would like to continue along that line. So, Madam AG, based on what the Chief Internal Auditor just said, were you an active participant in setting the date for the entrance and exit meeting?
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated earlier, I have a few brief remarks that I'd like to share in responding to the member's question.
Go ahead, AG.
First, I would like to correct a statement I made last week, which I accept full responsibility for, Mr. Chairman, because I went against my better judgment and principle, and not to speak from an informed position. Last week, I would have told the committee that I was not on the island for the entrance meeting, and that was not accurate. In fact, Mr. Chairman, what I have been able to glean is that a letter was received from the internal auditor dated July 2nd, advising of an entrance meeting on July 4th for the audit to commence July 8th. And just as the internal auditor has indicated, he would have stated that we must indicate whether we find the date amenable. Well, the options we had was either the 4th or the 5th. What I've also been able to determine, Mr. Chairman, is that the letter didn't come to me. Though it was addressed to me, it did not pass my desk. And I must say that I went through all efforts, and at this point in time, I think my IT officer is trying to recover my emails from 2019 to check my calendar to see why it is. I suspect I would have had a conflicting meeting based on the short notice, but I cannot say specifically what reason would have been present at that time why I was not at the meeting of July 4th, which we were advised of July 2nd. Now, also to say that contrary to what the internal auditor had reported last week, we did not receive an engagement letter because I sought to determine the objectives set out in that letter. What we received is actually, I have a copy of that letter, which I say did not pass my desk, providing notice that the audit would commence on the 8th of July. Now, as it pertains to the exit interview, whilst I was on vacation, Mr. Dillon sent by email a request on January 15th requesting a meeting on the 27th of January. So he sent along with that email the draft audit report. I suspect that my officers would have contacted me because we sent an email to Mr. Dillon on my request that I am asking for the meeting to be shifted from the 27th to the 29th. And my reason for asking that is that I was scheduled to resume duties on the 27th. I wanted that day to be clear, Mr. Chairman. I did not want to have any meetings on that day because the meeting of the Public Accounts Committee was scheduled for the 28th of January. I wanted to utilize that day as I usually do. Well, I generally prepare the week before, but I was on vacation. So I wanted that day to prepare for the Public Accounts Committee. On the morning of the 28th, an email was sent to me by the clerk indicating that the meeting was postponed, and as such, it would be held on the 29th. Because of that shift, Mr. Chairman, I would have told my Deputy AG of what has the circumstances, and rather than asking the internal auditor to shift the date again, which I had asked him before, I asked him to go ahead and conduct the exit interview because I looked at the matters at hand, and I figured that these are matters that can be addressed by the Deputy Auditor General. And hence, Mr. Chairman, while I was not at the meeting, but I want to add, Mr. Chairman, that though I was not present at the exit interview, I reviewed the report. And what I submitted to the clerk last week is evidence that I held a meeting the very next week with the Executive Management Committee. I sent extracts of that meeting showing that we discussed the matters raised by the internal auditor and actually having that minutes, the steps that we would take to actually address those issues. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't want the impression to be given that I did not take this matter seriously, but I want to say to you, Mr. Chairman, that my approach is different. It may not be acceptable by all, but my approach is different. And I'll give you an example. The practice that exists in many ministries, departments, and agencies is that any request made by my team members must pass the desk of the head of the agency. I don't impose that requirement, Mr. Chairman. Once the audit started, my missive to the Corporate Services Division was to provide all the information to the internal auditor and provide it within a time. We have nothing to hide, Mr. Chairman. We have nothing to fear. And as such, I do not act in a way to interrupt the work of the internal auditor. Mr. Dillon can admit that in my meetings with him, I have said to him on more than one occasion that if you are having a difficulty obtaining information from the audit staff, please contact me. Mr. Dillon has never contacted me. In fact, my impression is that the audit was conducted under a relatively amicable atmosphere. I also wish to express, Mr. Chairman, that whereas the internal auditor's methods and my methods don't necessarily conflate, I believe it is his professional responsibility to conduct his audit the way he believes it is to be conducted. I, however, have stated to the internal auditor in the minutes, the meetings that we have had, my concerns that was expressed in an expectation that as we go forward that there is better understanding among us and the communication, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, in closing, I just wish to say that I was not asked to come before the PAC. I contacted you, Mr. Chairman, because I believe I am responsible to the people of Jamaica, and I asked to come before the Public Accounts Committee. I came before the Public Accounts Committee knowing very well that I will likely be asked questions that are unrelated to the report. But as I say, Mr. Chairman, I am not fearful. I have nothing to hide. And I also wish to correct a statement made by Member Miller. At no time last week did I indicate that I will not provide an answer. I simply said that I cannot be forced to provide an answer for which I do not have at the moment. And what I pleaded with the committee members was to give me an opportunity to review the records to see, because I just could not remember. And I don't know that anybody can be faulted for not remembering, Mr. Chairman. So I am here. Questions, Member Sibley's indicated that he has general questions to ask, and I welcome those questions. But I want to reinforce that if I do not have the answer, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to provide anything, because I do not want to do what I had to do just now, to come back and to retract on something that I say. That is my professional experience that I have had to speak from an informed position. I went against that last week, and I don't intend to go against it going forward, Mr. Chairman. I'm answerable to the people of Jamaica. I have absolutely nothing to hide. I welcome all questions, but I must be given time to provide the answers if I do not have it at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Madam Auditor General. I have Member Sibley's, then Member Charles, then Member Guy. All right, Member Clark after. Member Clark after, when we go through, yeah. Member Sibley's.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, is it that members have questions relating to the matter of the exit and entrance interview? And so I will yield to the persons who have, because I want to move on.
Okay,
as well.
Member Charles had a question. Go ahead.
My question is very, very quick. AG, I just want to say thank you for your answer. I really appreciate the depth that you went through, and I understand, because I would find it strange. I think you are a strong woman, and you know I'm into woman power. Strike the word power from my words. But
there's nothing wrong with that word.
But I'm glad that you were able to explain that, because I know how important it is when you have your audits that those that are in charge are there to answer. So I'm glad that you could explain that. And I also know, as a dental surgeon, that everyone has their own style. So I just wanted a quick question to you and to Mr. Dillon. I'll start with Mr. Dillon. Mr. Dillon, your style seems to be a little bit different from the Auditor General's, and that's fine, as she said. What are your qualifications? Just want to find out your qualifications real quick before I move on. Yours, and after you answer, I'll just have hers, and then I'll end my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is that something that we need to discuss here? The qualifications, a point of order, Mr. Chairman. A point of order.
Yes, Member Cousins.
My point of order, Mr. Chairman. How are the qualifications of Mr. Dillon relevant to this discussion? He is already employed in his capacity at the Auditor General's Department. That is not for the Ministry of Finance. That is not for us to discuss here. We are not human resource officers.
I'm very sorry, but I'm allowed to ask a question.
You know, Mr. Chairman,
I'm allowed to ask a question, and it's nothing illegal.
We're losing the confidence, Mr. Chairman, because guess what? We have had other public servants that have been brought before us as recent as less than a month ago, and question of that nature was asked of the persons, and it was required that answers be given. So I don't understand my colleague member who don't visit PAC as often as he should.
Let me, Member Charles wanted to just say something.
Question, sir. Chairman, I'm not trying to be adversary. It's not an adversary question. It's a question of style. I have no problem with everyone's different style. I was just curious as to find out what his qualifications were versus hers, and that's fine. I mean, it's a simple question, and I'm sure I could look it up, but I just wanted to have it on record.
Okay. Member Dillon?
All right, member, my highest qualification is first degree. Yes. Management.
Yes, I'm a chartered accountant, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Member Charles, does that answer it? Okay. Okay.
For the position of the Auditor General, is there a standard qualification? Do you have to have a first degree, a second degree, a doctorate, what?
I believe so, that there would be. And the Services Commission, which interviews candidates for that position, would have some criteria in terms of the academic plus the professional qualification that would ensure that whoever is the candidate in that position is suitably qualified. So, yes, I believe so. Member Guy?
I listened to the AG in her reasons as to why she was not there on the 29th. Member Charles asked a question about PAC usually meeting on Tuesdays. Right. I just want to read something into this is a notice to members from Anelia McCarthy on the 22nd of January 2020. Good day, members. This is to PAC members, and this I'm just found on my emails. Subsequent to a request from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service to facilitate the review of the second supplementary estimates by the PAAC next Tuesday, January 28th, 2020, the next meeting of the PAC has been rescheduled to Wednesday, January 29th, 2020 at 10 a.m. and not next Tuesday as previously scheduled. Now, the AG said that the exit audit was held on the 29th, my understanding. The AG came back to work on the 27th, my understanding based on what you just said, in preparation for PAC on the 28th, which was subsequently changed to the next day to facilitate the second supplementary estimate by the PAAC, right? So she was actually, and based on what we have been told by no, hold on, but I'm just providing some further corroboration by email from the Parliament to a member. No, she never said anything about the member. To the member, well, I don't know whether you accepted it. You didn't say. But I am asking, I'm just making the point that Member Charles asked about PAC being Tuesdays or Wednesdays. PACs are normally on Tuesdays, and hence this particular letter asked the members to meet the next day.
All right, member. Okay. Member Wilson.
Yes, Chair. I'm having some difficulty with the proceedings of the PAC, particularly because when questions are asked, we have members answering the question instead of those we have under scrutiny. So similar to what Member Guy has just said, my colleague member, that was totally unnecessary in my humble opinion. And how the standing order has it written here, that is not how we should be proceeding with the committee. And I think we are gradually losing the confidence of the chair. I continue to say that because we're seeing it sliding inch by inch. And I want us to kind of tighten that up, Chair, with all due respect.
And with all due respect to you, I have allowed members who, like yourself, have asked to make points. Sometimes I don't believe those points have relevance, but I allow members because they have a right. You are elected and I allow you to make points. So in the same way that you are allowed to make points, member guy made a point too. You don't think it is relevant, but he made the point too, right? I have tried to control the meetings, but members ask many questions, which you have a right to do, and I'm not going to curtail legitimate questions from being asked. Member Clark, you had your hand up before. Your time, sir. Okay, so Member Sibley's now.
Thank you, Chair. As the Auditor General had pointed out earlier, I do have some questions that I really want to ask to get back to the substance of why we are here. Okay? Great. With regards to your audit, because you speak about style, Auditor General. So I just want to ask you. No, the Auditor General said that her style is somewhat different from the chief. The method is different from, I just want to know, there are certain methods that I want to ask you about that I am of the view that they should not be different. All right? But that's my opinion. Do you normally rotate your auditors?
That's the question?
Yes, that's the question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And
I'm answering through the chairman.
Yes. And you rotate your auditors. Why? Why? I know the answer, but I just want you to just say it so that we all can understand that auditors are rotated.
You're asking me why I rotate the auditors to prevent familiarity, but I also rotate our auditors as a means of their own development. We have 5 different types of audits that we conduct, and these are managed by 5 different units. And so officers request at times transfers from one unit to another, but generally we also seek to capitalize on what we consider to be the strengths of the members of the department. And so we will make changes as we go along.
Just one procedural matter. There are some members who want to join via Zoom, so the person who is managing it, could you just let those members in? I think Senator Morrison wants to join. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Member Morrison wants to join. My apologies.
She's now in the meeting. She's in the meeting.
She's in the meeting now. All right, go ahead.
Well, I want to know, Madam E.G., your Deputy Auditor General, do they have administrative role?
To some extent, Mr. Chairman, but I have what is called an executive management committee that meets on a monthly basis. Our reasons for meeting is to monitor the implementation of the various plans that we have, such as the procurement plan, the strategic business plan, as well as to monitor the implementation of our strategic audit plan. We have, as I say, pre-scheduled meetings. The deputies are all members of that committee.
And Madam E.G., when you conduct your audit, you are required to publish an report?
Yes, an annual report?
No. Whenever let me rephrase, please. Whenever any one of your member of team is assigned to conduct an audit, it is required for a report to be published, or
not in all instances.
Not in all instances. No. Can you state?
I publish reports in relation to special audits, to performance audits, information technology audits. The assurance audits, I provide each entity with a completion report, that would set out the compliance issues that we identified during the audit of either, whether it's the financial statements or the appropriation accounts, and the entities are provided with an opportunity to respond. At the end of the year, I will review the responses to determine the errors, the areas that have not been addressed. And then what you will find in the annual report are matters that have remained unaddressed by the entity. But before it is published in the annual report, which is required by Constitution, all MDs are provided with the extract that will appear in the annual report and given an opportunity to provide a response to indicate whether they accept what is being said. If they believe there are any errors, they are required to provide a response to us by a particular time.
And Madam A.G., you said it is required by the Constitution for a report to be published?
Yes. The Auditor General is required by, I don't want to hazard a guess about the section of the Constitution, but to submit to the Speaker of the House on an annual basis the annual report setting out the activities of the department and the findings. Every year I submit by the 31st of December a report to Parliament as required by the Constitution. And that report, which you should all have a copy of, sets out all the audits conducted, even in the instances where I submit full reports, say for performance audits or special audits. There are extracts of that report included in the annual report, and I will indicate the steps that have been taken to address the recommendations.
So, Madam A.G., you are saying, I want to get this very clear. You are saying that you are required by law to submit the report, to submit an annual report of your findings, your audit that you have conducted for the year?
Yes, by the Constitution. It's a constitutional requirement.
So you have no discretion.
When you say no discretion, what do you mean?
You cannot choose whether or not to put something in your annual report that you would have audited or not to put. You are, based on the Constitution and my understanding of it, Madam A.G., you are to submit to the Speaker of the House your report of the audits that you have conducted. Is that so?
Yes, that would be correct.
Right. There is an action item, Madam A.G., that came from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security with regards to farm work. And do you recall that a question was asked about the auditing of the farm work program? And at that time, you told us that you do audit of the farm work program between April and June annually.
Well, it's actually August, thereabouts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you said it's between April and August?
I would say it's more, we tend to go to Canada between June, August, thereabout, because April will be too soon for the financial statements.
Just speak into the mics because Hansard needs to pick up what you said.
Okay. So generally between June, August, September, because we have to give, we generally schedule the audit when we know the financial statements are ready.
Very well. You also said, AG, I want to make sure, because I made some notes. You also said that you didn't put anything in this year's report, annual report.
Correct, because an audit was not conducted.
Because
an audit was not conducted.
And the audit was not conducted because of the COVID. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that the report, the annual report that you have tabled, Madam AG, did not have the farm work program in it, but it was for the period 2019 to 2020, Madam AG. And the fact is, the pandemic never started until March of 2020. And so that response that you would have given us would be misleading, because for 2019, there was no pandemic.
Do you want me to respond now?
Please.
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, we visit Canada on an annual basis to conduct the audit of the farm work program. I just indicated that the timing of the visit is generally tied to the preparation of the financial statements. So if I visited Canada 2020, it would have been to do the audit of the 1920 financial statements, which would be ready after the 31st of March 2020. The year before, I would have visited the program for the audit, which is, I think, 1819, and information would be in that annual report.
Madam AG, can you just follow me for a bit? We're dealing with dates.
Right.
We're dealing with dates. So I don't know if you want to write so that you can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand perfectly what you're saying.
What I am saying, Madam
Yes.
AG, it would be expected that there would be a report in the annual report for your 2019-2020 audit.
If it was done. The
2019,
2020
2020
is generally done
is,
between
you're
August.
mixing, you see, you're mixing up two things, Madam AG. I'm not talking about your report. I'm not talking about the audit.
Mm-hmm.
The audit of 2019-2020 would be done in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be correct?
Yes.
Right. And that would not, and therefore, in the report of 2021, I'm expecting not to see a report.
No, that's not correct. The report for 1920 should have appeared in the annual report for 1920. The report for 2021 ought to be, the audit should be conducted between this year, June.
No, I'm not talking about the audit.
Yeah.
Madam AG, as I said, I want you to just listen to what I'm saying. Every year, right, saving the year 2020, which is the year of the pandemic, which the year of the pandemic means that you would not have a report in the following year for 2020, 2021. All right, let me move away from that.
Hold on. Member Clark has hold on, Member Sibley's. Member Clark been holding, so go ahead, Member Clark.
I think, Mr. Chairman, the question is, in 2019, the year 2019, did Madam AG visited any farm or farms in Canada that is under the farm work program? Did she?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to just ask the request that the audit report for 1819 be brought up. I think it's a matter of
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman, just a minute. No, I am on the floor. I am asking a simple question. Did any time in 2019 Madam AG went abroad to Canada in particular to audit the farm work program. Did you leave Jamaica to go to Canada in 2019? And if you did, give us the dates.
Well, you're asking me for specific dates now, which I'm not going to hazard a guess on.
Right.
So
Don't give me the
get
date,
that
Madam AG.
But we did go in 2019. And so that report for 2019 would appear in the 1819 report.
Madam AG, you're talking about impossibility. The 1819 report would have been tabled already.
No.
Your
Chair, the members are misunderstanding.
Go ahead and...
My report for 1819 is tabled 9 months after the year end. It is not tabled until the 31st of December 2019. The audit for the farm work program for 2019, therefore, would be in that report, because we would have visited Canada, we would have provided a completion report, the Ministry of Labour would have provided a response, and then it would appear in the same year, which is what I'm trying to get across, that it is a matter of timing that we're talking about. So the reports for the farm work program actually appears in the report of the Auditor General for the same period.
Chair.
Hold on, let me just so I am clear. The financial year ends March 31st, right? So for 2019, you went and you audited in 2019, and your 2019 report would have been submitted December 31st, 2019.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So your period when you report, because that is what I want to get to. Your reporting period is, tell us the reporting period, please.
What the Constitution indicates, and I don't know if someone can just bring up a
No, Madam AG, just tell me the reporting period.
What it requires is that I provide a report on I'm not sure if it says the previous financial period, up to the 31st of March. Right. However, despite the fact that it says to the 31st of March, I include all audits done up to November as insofar as I receive a response from the entities.
Okay.
So I don't have a strict cutoff line for the 31st of March.
So your report need to say then, Madam AG, your report is up to...
The annual report will tell you that it contains audits up to, say, September or October, whichever the cutoff date is. What I do is that I ensure that I cut off at a point in time to allow the entities to provide a response. So I generally cut off audits for the annual report between up to October, the first week of November, so that because I generally give the entities 2 weeks to provide a response, and in most situations they ask for additional time. Because I have to meet the constitutional requirement, I try to cut off on my report, say about by the first to going into the second week, to allow for all the editorial issues. But it does, as long as the entity provides a response, and I'm assured that they have been given sufficient opportunity to respond, and they provide it, it is included in the annual report.
Thank you, AG. So the follow-up question to that, Madam AG, I have spent some time and looked at your previous annual audit reports for about 5 or 6 years. I've gone through them because you had told us that every year that you do the audit of the farmer program, you include it in your annual report. It was only two of 5 years I have seen anything from the Auditor General with regards to the farmer program. Is it that you never do any audit during those years, or you just never include it in your annual report? And if you never include it in your audit report, did you send it to the entity so that we can, I can ask the entity if they had received the audit report? Because the farmer program is one that is very important, and we want to make sure that probity is there.
Right. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, through you, a full report for the farm work program was tabled in 2017. So you would not see anything in the annual report specific to that. That report actually speaks to the issues that the issue that I raised at the meeting of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security in terms of the number of layers. Well, I guess that was in there. Right. What I'm being advised here is that the cutoff time for the annual report had passed, and so the report for 18-19 was not included in the annual report, but it was sent to the entity. But it was not sent within the time that would have allowed for the feedback and the responses.
But what of the other years? I'm saying I have reviewed your audit, your annual reports, and I have not seen it. Well, and the only Madam AG, to be honest, the only reason why I went to look and read your annual reports for the last 5 or so years was based on the report that I have been receiving on my phone and in emails and so on with regards to the farm work program. As you would have been aware, that is public. That is something that I have said in this committee, and I have asked the Ministry of Labor and Social Security to make sure that these things are right. And the fact that you told me that you did audit every year, and that every year you published, that is what you would have said, per se. And when I went back and I never saw, there was none for some of the years. So I am a bit concerned there, Madam AG. And I yield to other members who have questions. I have other questions for other areas, right, but member, that is very concerning to me.
Member, let me just ask as a follow-up. Is it a requirement that you must audit the farm work program every single year?
To do the audit of the financial statements, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so is the issue, we know you have a requirement to do a number of audits of ministries, agencies, and departments. Is the issue an issue of resources, or what would be the issue that would have precluded the audit from being done on an annual basis?
Point of order, Chair. The Auditor General never said she never did an audit.
No, I'm asking the question.
For the farmer, Chair.
Yes.
The Auditor General told us that the only year she did not do an audit was the year of the pandemic. So the question with regards to what could have caused not to do an audit in this particular instance, we're talking about the farmer, the overseas farmer program. And I think the Auditor General, I don't think, my recollection is that she put it in the annual report.
All right, but let me just allow her to answer then. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have the report in front of me, which was sent to the Ministry of Labor. As I indicated, it didn't make it to the annual report because of the time with which the report went to the, I did say something about the cutoff time, right? And so it never made it there. But, Mr. Chairman, I have to say that having not made it to the 18-19 report, it should have been included in the 1920 as something that was omitted, and I think this was an oversight on our part.
Okay, thank you. Member Wilson. Member Wilson.
And Chair, before Member Wilson go in, there are other years when the farm work program with regards to the audit never made it to the audit, the annual report.
You mean to the annual report?
Right?
Right.
And that's why I made the inquiry of the Auditor General with regards to requirement. She did answer me two weeks ago, but I wanted to make sure, right? And the Auditor General confirmed. So we want here to be assured that the reports are included in the annual report. All these audits that should, because this is where the probity continues. Right? And not to include it or not to get it here, we are unable to hold the executive accountable, because we are in, the principal agency theory, where the citizen holds us accountable every 4 or so years, or when the Prime Minister calls the election. But it is committees like the PAC and the PAC that hold in the interim, hold the executive accountable. So the ministries and the various departments like the Auditor General's Department and other probity department, that we hold them accountable. And the citizen of this country doesn't expect any less. So where there's a gap, we have to point out the gap and ask that some attention be paid to that, and so that we can get these reports so that we can continue the probity.
Madam AG, you want to just respond, and then I go to Member Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, as you can see, I'm getting information from all angles with respect to the reports. I clearly cannot say definitively the other years that there would be a gap, because I know that for every year we have provided an audit report to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. But Mr. Chairman, if a matter doesn't make it to the report, it certainly isn't any attempt whatsoever to cover up anything. I have a full 27-page report here, and I am kind of disappointed that it never made it to the report, having looked at it and seen the issues that are included therein, and I guarantee you that it will make its way to the public's domain. On the matter of the inclusion of all reports, this is not the Canadian Farm Work audit alone that would not have made it to the report, even though an audit is conducted. Because as I say, Mr. Chairman, if I cannot get absolute assurance that the content of those reports are correct, if I cannot get the response from the entity, if I have done it on one occasion where I included a matter for a ministry, and I indicated by way of a disclaimer that the ministry did not provide the information. The intent is to include all matters in the report, because it is evidence of the work done by the Auditor General's Department for the year. So there's no reason why we would have information and not want to include it in the report. I take Member Sibley's point, but I don't know that it would be fair to the department to suggest that we do work and we do not report on it. If it's not in the report, as I indicated here, the timing would not have allowed the entity to provide a response, and that is clearly linked to the time that we would have sent the report to the entity as well. But I will ensure, Mr. Chairman, that this report is tabled, and based on the fact that the annual report has passed, I will table it in its full form.
Member Sibley's, hold on. Member Wilson has been holding.
Chair,
hold on, Member Sibley's.
Chair, it's a matter the Auditor General has just addressed my point. Would you yield? Thank you. At no time did I suggest. At no time did I suggest. I stated some facts. It's not a suggestion, Madam AG. I stated some facts that it's not there. To say that I am suggesting is not correct. This is what I'm suggesting now, Madam AG. Where you are not confident in the report, similar to what the example you cited as to put a note to inform, I would suggest then that for future that it is done so that the public is informed. I'm not suggesting nothing else but that. So earlier, where you say where I'm suggesting, I'm not suggesting, I just stated some facts.
All right, Member Wilson and Member Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Madam AG, I would start off by saying that the farmer program is a very important program to all members here and to myself in particular. And I wanted to ask a few questions as it relates to the delay of inclusion of the report of the farmer program in the annual report of the AG's department. So would you say in your words this is a substantial part of the AG's operation each year for the annual audit of the farmer program? And that is one of a series of questions I'm going to ask. So would you say it's a critical component of the AG's department to conduct this audit?
Okay, member, your question is why the delay?
No, I'm asking if the farmer program is considered a critical part of the operations of the AG to be audited each year as a matter of importance.
It is a requirement by a cabinet decision, member, that it be audited each year by the Auditor General.
Yes, thank you. How many persons generally travel to Canada? Right, 2. Now, on the return of these 2 persons, and being that it is imperative based on the directive of cabinet, what is the reason for us missing, as in the AG department, missing the inclusion of the report, the farm working report, in the annual report, being that it is a directive of cabinet?
Mr. Chairman, what my deputy is saying to me, who would have had responsibility for preparing to completing the report, is that there were some issues surrounding the governance matters pertaining to the farmer program, and more specifically the management committee. And I believe there is information that we were requesting, and we were getting conflicting information from out of the cabinet office as it pertains to what would have been provided to us by the management committee or their understanding of their corporate governance structure. I think that would have contributed to the delay in actually finalizing the report.
So you're saying that the issues that are raising with the management committee, so the challenge I'm having, Madam AG, is that we know, even now that this is expected. So I would have expected that plans are put in place so we can have the report in time for it to be included in the annual report. And the fact that it's now being highlighted that it's not just 1 year it was missing in other years.
I'm not aware of the other years, Mr. Chairman. I'll have to do my checks and to see why it is that the information was missing.
It's a matter of concern. So I'm wondering now whether it's a systemic issue within the system where we are not putting whether tighter timelines, or is it that there's just a lax in the approach in terms of the management committee, as you highlighted, or whatever other issues you may be experiencing why we are causing a delay. Because I think, as my fellow member said, it is unacceptable, being that the farmer program is critical. It's the most demand item in my constituency, I can tell you. And for that reason, I would want us to do whatever we can to ensure that we have full probity in how we look at the farmer program.
Okay. So what I'd like to respond to say is that despite the fact that the report has not been included in the report, in the annual report, a completion report is prepared. Well, the member went back 5 years. I'm going to do my search to 10 years, or from since I've been auditing the farmer program, just to see the trend on that. But on every occasion, the report is sent. In fact, I generally send 9 copies, not just to the permanent secretary to the Ministry of Labor, but to every member of the management committee. I cannot say at this point in time whether I copy the financial secretary on that report as well. Well, it's been confirmed that I copy the cabinet secretary on the report.
All right, Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam AG, the Department of the Auditor General, is it a creature of Parliament or a creature of Cabinet? I just want to know.
The position of Auditor General is a creature of the Constitution. It's called a department because it is not, the department is not recognized in the Constitution, only the Auditor General.
Okay, so the Auditor General is a creature of Parliament. And so it is guided by Parliament and not Cabinet.
No, well, let me read to you what the Constitution says. Okay. All right, so section 122, let me just read section 122. Functions of the Auditor General. The accounts of the Court of Appeal, the accounts of the Supreme Court, the accounts of the offices of the clerks to the Senate and the Houses of Representatives, and the accounts of all departments and offices of the Government of Jamaica, including the offices of the Cabinet, the Judicial Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, and the Police Service Commission, but excluding the Department of the Auditor General, shall at least once in every year be audited and reported on by the Auditor General, who, with his subordinate staff, shall at all times to be entitled to have access to all books, records, returns, and reports relating to such accounts. Section 122(2) says the Auditor General shall submit his report made under subsection 1 to this section of the Speaker, or if the office of the Speaker is vacant or the Speaker is for any reason unable to perform the function of his office, to the Deputy Speaker, who shall cause them to be laid before the House of Representatives. Section 122(3, in the exercise of his functions under the provisions of subsections 1 and 2 of this section, the Auditor General shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority. Section 122(4, The accounts of the Department of the Auditor General shall be audited and reported on by the Minister responsible for finance, and the provisions of sections 1 and 2 of this section shall apply in relation to the exercise of that minister of those functions as they apply in relation to the audits and reports made by the Auditor General. Nothing in this section shall prevent the performance of the Auditor General of such other functions in relation to the accounts of the Government of Jamaica and the accounts of other public authorities and other bodies administering public funds in Jamaica as may be prescribed by under any law for the time being in force in Jamaica.
Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General read all that from the Jamaica Constitution booklet. I am asking a question, and let me make it simpler. Who is it that has that authority over the Auditor General's department? Is it Parliament or Cabinet?
Okay, well, the legal opinion, Mr. Chairman, that I have received, and I believe that if it is that it is not clear, I believe legal opinion should be sought on it, and I'll just read to you. As it pertains to the work of the Auditor General, the function of an auditor in the exercise of his functions under the provisions of subsection 1 and 2 of this section, the Auditor General shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority, as it pertains to the audit function.
Mr. Chairman, I just want a simple answer. 1 out of 2. Is it that you are an arm, a tentacle, a creature of Parliament or Cabinet?
I think it's neither.
It's neither.
She's saying the Constitution outlines the specific functions, yeah.
Exactly.
It cannot be neither. Point out. It cannot be neither. It cannot be neither.
Well, member,
because I just want to make a point, not to you. I think, Chair.
Hold on, 1 second,
Chair,
Member Siblings. Hold on, 1 second, Member Siblings. Let me just try. If the issue, there are 2 issues. There are issues around direction of the Auditor General, and I think what the Auditor General read is clear that nobody can direct. Now, if the issue is around the accountability of the Auditor General, that would be to the Parliament, right? The accountability would be to the Parliament.
Point of Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Hold on.
Chair, point
Yes.
of order.
Yeah.
I think we will be, if we continue along this path, we are going to, there's 2 things here. The member asks if, is it to the, who directs the Auditor General? Okay? Is it the Cabinet or the Parliament? Wait. And the Auditor General rightfully went to the Constitution. Where the dispute is that someone said it's neither. And it's the Auditor General do not take directives and it's in line with audit function that auditors do not take directives about their work, the methodology, how they go about their work, how they go about getting, whether they do a sample, whether they do the entire population. They have guidance and standards which guide them. Administratively, then with regards to salary, per se, the fact that the Auditor General Department is financed by the Ministry of Finance, the Government of Jamaica. There are certain guidelines with regards to procurement, traveling, etc., that they would have to comply with. that is not directing the Auditor General and our team with regards to methodology.
Member Clark, I know you're not satisfied, so...
No, I'm not satisfied. I'm not
again.
satisfied, Mr. Chairman, because there are 63 members of Parliament that falls under the auspice of Parliament. But not all 63 are a part of Cabinet. Right? I am asking the Auditor General, within the setting of administration, where on that triangle would you fall? Parliament or Cabinet?
Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General's Department has its own head. It is not placed under any other, what would I say? I don't want to say entity, but any other form. Portfolio, yes, correct, that's the right term. It's not placed under any other portfolio. All matters pertaining to the Auditor General for salary is approved by the Ministry of Finance, but we do not fall under the Ministry of Finance.
So Mr. Chairman, maybe three meetings ago, the Auditor General would have said to us, and correct me if I'm wrong, that something happened some years before where the farm work program was concerned, and a document was issued for the farm work program to be audited yearly, and the persons who are supposed to be a part of that audit team has to be somebody of senior position. Right, madam?
The decision, as I was told, said specifically the Auditor General accompanied by a senior officer.
And there's a document that is on file that we can peruse.
I know I saw that document probably as far back as 2009. We would have to search for it.
So can that be made available to us?
And I will ask the Cabinet as well, because it's a Cabinet decision, so there should be a copy at the Cabinet. So I'll do my search, Mr. Chairman.
So Cabinet directed you that time?
It's not directed, no, a direction was not issued to me. At that point in time,
Cabinet suggests to you then that you do it?
The FAA Act, Mr. Chairman, has a provision under Section 30 that allows a member of Parliament to request of the Auditor General to undertake an audit. The Auditor General, as the Constitution indicates, has the, I would think, the discretion to undertake an
Whether or
audit.
not. So it was on the request of...
It says actually by resolution. I think section
by
30,
resolution?
Yes, by resolution.
Are you sure?
It says by resolution that a member of the Parliament can make a request for an audit to be conducted.
Therefore, Mr. Chairman, from what I'm understanding now, from what the Auditor General just made mention of, for a resolution to be taken, it has to be done at Parliament. No, I'm not hearing you, Mr. Chairman.
A resolution would have to be passed at Parliament.
And
yes.
therefore, that resolution has to be somewhere in the archives of Parliament.
It should be.
So I am asking now, Mr. Chairman, through you, can we now ask Parliament to make available that resolution, that which was passed, voted on, debated, voted on, and passed into being?
And this is a resolution that speaks specifically to the audit of the farm work program.
Directly to what Madam AG said some weeks ago, wherein, because of what took place, that the directive was, or the request, or the desire, whatever it is, which was supposed to come to Parliament through a resolution and pass, that a senior member.
No, that's not your misquoted.
All right, let me hear the AG. I have two members waiting, but yes, AG, you want to clarify
Mr.
that?
Chairman, the audit of the farm work program, I know, would have predated 1997. And I can say that 89. I'm told that it commenced in 89. And I say 1997 because I remember the then Auditor General actually going to Canada on an annual basis for the audit. When I conducted the audit for the first year, I inquired into the basis of the audit, and I wanted to know that because of the angle that I wanted to come from in a report that I was writing. I do recall seeing a copy of a cabinet decision at that point in time. Mr. Chairman, and I may have gotten it whilst I was in Canada. I cannot guarantee that I'm able to find it at this point in time. I also cannot say what. I know it was a cabinet decision. I do not know if there was a resolution in the House that was from 1989. It is before my time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask Hansard to pull or to bring up and make available the information as it really? No, not you.
Okay.
Hansard.
Okay.
Whilst we were discussing, we were questioning the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. Madam AG, sitting in that chair, would have made a statement. My colleague is saying that I am misquoting. So for transparency and prudence, that we ask Hansard to make that available. But in the same instance, I'm still asking that Parliament, make available to us the resolution that was passed, giving the Auditor General the permission, for want of a better phrase, to make sure that when the audit of the farmer program is being done, that a senior member.
All right, Member Clerk, you have made the request for the information, but just to be clear, the Auditor General said she's not sure whether it is a cabinet decision or whether it was a parliamentary, so she's saying she's not sure. But the point you have raised, you would like to see that decision or that recommendation. That's what you're asking for.
Mr. Chairman, everything that was said or is being said is recorded.
Yes.
The argument of a resolution was purported earlier. I am asking that once anything that has to do with a resolution must come to Parliament, it must be placed on the floor, debated, voted on, and passed. I am asking that be made to us. Or if my other colleagues don't want it, I need it.
No, I'm not preventing.
No, I know you're not preventing.
Right.
I know you're not preventing. So I just want to be clear in my mind.
Okay, point taken, Member Clerk. All right. Member Cousins.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam AG, the Office of Auditor General, when that person is appointed, is there security of tenure, meaning that person serves until they retire?
The Constitution sets that out, Mr. Chairman, that an Auditor General is appointed up until age 60, and if there is also a provision for extension of time by 5 years. It also sets out the provisions, the procedures that must be followed if it is felt that an Auditor General is unsuitable due to infirmary of mind.
Thank you for that, Madam AG. And Chairman, that would be analogous to the post of the DPP and also judicial officers. And these posts, Chairman, were established because of the need to protect the democratic institutions which exist in this country. So in respect of the question as it relates to who the AG answers to, I believe the security of tenure, if you look at the purpose of that, it is clear that the Office of the Auditor General was intended to have the same powers as a judicial officer. So I don't know what the question is about, who the AG answers to. And for those of us in here who are
Point of order,
legal
Mr. Chairman.
officers,
On a
right,
point of
and
order, Mr.
officers of the
Chairman.
court, you
On
don't
a
have no
point of order, Mr.
Let me
Chairman.
speak. Because we are here questioning who the AG answers to.
Well, two mics are on, so I can't turn on mine. I know what a point of order is, and I don't need anybody to tell me, with all due respect. Okay? I allow everybody in here to ask questions, to go on, to make their points. Okay? Member Cousins is finished. Yes, Member Clark.
So it's not a point of order again, Mr. Chairman. So I'll just take the floor. Mr. Chairman, I am the member that raised the concern or the question as is that the member is making a statement. I am well aware of all that. The AG has just read all of it, so I'm well aware of it. All I'm simply trying to establish, all I'm simply asking is, was it by way of a resolution or just somebody mention it to the AG? The AG did said that any one member of parliament within the House can move a resolution. And from the resolution, then she follow up on it. I am asking the question that be made because the next question that I would ask of her, is it that somebody can just see you outside, say something to you, and you act upon it by way of an audit? That's all I'm asking.
But nobody is, Member Clark.
So I don't know where my
yes,
colleague
but Member Clark, respectfully, he has a right to intervene in the same way you do. You asked your question. I'm not saying your question is not valid. He made a point. Your question has been asked, and I don't believe it can be answered now. I've asked the committee clerk to do the research to find out whether it was a cabinet decision or a parliamentary resolution. And I've asked the committee clerk to check on that matter for you. Member Sibley.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it is my recollection as I had done some research on the matter where the AG said that the audit, I believe my colleagues to help me here, but based on a cabinet submission some years ago following a matter that was public, there was a requirement for the AG and another senior member of staff to conduct the audit. And the concern I think Member Clark is having is that it would go to directing the Auditor General in how to do his or her work. In that, and I want you to listen to me, AG, and to see where I'm going with it. In that, the cabinet ought not to be saying who should conduct an audit per se, because that is tantamount to directing. So the AG would have to go every year to do the audit. Notwithstanding the fact of rotation of auditors so that auditors don't get familiar. Because it is a standard, it is a practice to the extent that ICAJ is also the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica, and public bodies are being asked not to audit, not to use the same set of auditors for more than, it was 5 years, and they have moved it to more than 7 years, to have a rotation to prevent familiarity. And so those are the concern that the Auditor General would be of the view that he or she, in this case, Mrs. Ellis, would have to go to do the audit every year. And so the question I have, Auditor General, is a person that comes along with you, how long has that person that accompany you been traveling with you to do this audit?
So the person who accompanied me the last time would have probably accompanied me for 3 years. Before then, it was the person that accompanied the former Auditor General, and I guess he would have accompanied me up to the point in time of his retirement.
There is a concern.
Right. So, I hear the members' concern, and I think it can be addressed easily. The cabinet can revoke its requirement for it to be done by the Auditor General, because it was very specific, the requirement. So that can be revoked. Or I think as well that consideration could be given for an audit firm in Canada to be appointed to actually undertake the audit of the farm work program. So there are multiple ways to address the problem, Mr. Chairman, because I do not believe that it is something that has to be undertaken by the Auditor General on an annual basis going forward.
But Chair, I just want to know from the Auditor General that it is not lost on her that the point that we are making, that you're a creature of the Constitution, and from time to time, Cabinet will meet and make directives. One has to look at, as Auditor General, is this a directive as to methodology, or is this an administrative directive? Because we do not wish for any cabinet to give directive to the Auditor General as to how he or she should conduct her job.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe the former Auditor General saw it as a directive from Cabinet. It's a request for an audit, and there were certain specifications. But certainly, the members' comments, they're well taken because they can be applied in many other aspects, and certainly I will take that into consideration, which I've always done so. It's not in any way limited to the farm work program. It's in every other instances, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam AG. Mr. Dillon, I'm going to come to you now. You had provided, if you could just take us briefly through the report of the documents that were provided to you. We have the report, you'd have to read it word for word, but if you can just give us the summary.
The PAC requested that the documents that the Auditor General emailed to me to be reviewed. And these documents were the Disaster Preparedness Plan and Disaster Management Policy. Now, with respect to the Disaster Management Policy, we thought that it set the overall policy goals and objectives for disaster risk management in the department. And it also provided a basis for the formulation of a comprehensive disaster preparedness and emergency plan framework. The disaster preparedness plan, we'll be calling it the DPP, we found that it identified three main components, namely mitigating risks, identifying vulnerabilities, and the organization of effective disaster responses. The objectives that were stated for the DPP, that's the plan now, were to identify the personnel responsible for ensuring that the framework and procedures outlined in the plan are fulfilled and detailed steps needed for emergency responses. So our objective was to review the plan and the policy with a view to identifying the strengths and gaps. The policy, which sets out the rules for the key business activities in the event of a disaster. And these rules were included but not limited to the establishment of an integrated approach to disaster management, and it also provides a basis for the formulation of a comprehensive disaster preparedness and emergency plan framework. The plan, the disaster preparedness plan, captured 5 threats to the department's operations, and they are hurricane, earthquake, bombing, fire, and medical emergencies. There were some strengths that were found in the document. The documents we're discussing now, the department's disaster risk mitigating activities were comprehensively outlined in the plan. So, I mean, that would be a commendation for the department plan. The disaster management policy, it met, as far as we're concerned, it met its objectives as it established a framework for disaster risk management in support of the department's strategy. We also found that there were some gaps in the documents, and these are the policy comprehensively covered the pre-disaster and response phase. However, the continuity phase were not fully developed. We found that with the disaster preparedness plan, there were some information that were not included. For example, the list of officers to activate the disaster plans were not stated in some instances. With respect to the plan, there's a particular section that speaks to critical activities and action plan. What we found was that in 3 out of 8 of the action plans, the responsible unit was not stated. And the plan also has a section for responsible persons. And we found that 4 out of 8 instances, those were not stated. We identified some opportunities for improving these documents. And we had 2 main points. The policy should be reviewed with a view to further develop the continuity phase of the disaster management. And secondly, the plan should be updated with the names/posts of all the key personnel. So in concluding, we're saying that the disaster management policy provides a good framework for disaster risk management in support of the policy objectives. The disaster preparedness plan captures disasters that the department considers to be a threat to the organization, and it also included mitigating strategies to minimize the impact of those disasters. We also indicate that, in general, the review and updating of the disaster preparedness plan could be further bolstered to to strengthen the effectiveness of the department's disaster preparedness and emergency responses.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dillon. Any members? So let me just tell you the order. Member Clark, Member Wilson, Member Sibley's.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Public Accounts Committee, Auditor General's Department, May 11, 2021. I just want some housekeeping matters, Mr. Dillon. The Auditor General office would be at Waterloo Road sometime before it went to Knoxford Road?
Correct.
Is it possible, Mr. Chairman, for us to understand, to get an understanding of what was a lease agreement, what it entails at Waterloo Road? Do you have that information now?
No, I'm not equipped with that information now.
So can I request at a later date that it be provided, Mr. Chairman?
Auditor General, you
Yes.
can provide any
Yes.
clarity on this?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. We sent packages to the clerk, I think 2 weeks ago, a Friday, that would include all information in relation to the relocation of the department from Waterloo Road to Knutsford Boulevard. In fact, we brought it here with us the very first day. There were several packages like this, and I sent sufficient for all members because I wanted the members to be guided when I speak to this issue. No, not those. I believe it, yes, it's bounded, correct. I sent it in the packages, but apparently it was bounded.
But
So
it's not this document?
Yes, it is. It is at the back.
Oh,
so I think
okay.
all that the member is requesting in relation to the relocation, and I'm happy to address that matter, Mr. Chairman, because I know it is a matter of, in fact, a request was made by the House for specific questions. I've included my response through the Speaker of the House as well, and all the documents. So I am somewhat prepared, Mr. Chairman, to provide all the information that the member is asking. The internal auditor would have done that audit in 2013-14.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order, sir.
Yeah, what's the point about
I deliberately did not ask of the AG. I asked Mr. Dillon. So what is happening here now is taking us down a road that I don't want to go as yet. So I asked Mr. Dillon a question. If the document that Madam AG is relating to is this document that I may mention before I started my presentation, when was this document made available to us as members? When?
I would have gotten this document today.
Today?
Yes.
So we would not have gotten enough time to peruse.
Yes, agreed.
So I am well aware of that. The question I asked was directly to Mr. Dillon, who would have had knowledge, and if he cannot give us that information, then we can ask that he make it available at a later date. So this document, we will be able to peruse it over a week or so, and next week we can take it. We didn't get any time to...
No, I'm accepting. We haven't had an opportunity to go through it. But go ahead with the questions.
And that's why I said that there are some small housekeeping matters.
Go ahead, Member Clark.
That same lease, Mr. Dillon, through you, Mr. Chair, it was quoted in US dollars. Me know. I know.
I am unable to say right now because of the elapse in time since we looked at that.
Here, what I will do, Mr. Chairman, there are a number of questions that I have, and I will forward it through you, the chair, so that they can be made available to Mr. Dillon, for Mr. Dillon to give us some answers that we can use them at the next sitting.
All right. Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Now, going back to our discussions last week, where the business continuity plan was mentioned, I wanted to confirm now whether you can indicate whether you have the draft copy or the final copy of the disaster risk management plan from the AG department, because last week there was some, there wasn't clarity as to which copy that was received. Could you indicate which? What was sent to me subsequent to the meeting last week was the final copy of the disaster preparedness plan and the disaster management policy. Okay. So you are now in receipt of the final copy, the final version? Correct. These were signed documents. Okay. All right. As it relates to the scope, which took up a lot of the time last week, the scope you indicated was looking predominantly at ICT and the risk that that would pose in the AG department because there is no business continuity plan as it relates to ICT. I'm hearing a very different narrative today because last week you said that the disaster risk management plan was not a part of what your scope was looking at. So can you just clarify for me whether you are retracting from that statement that you are not looking at the entire scope of disaster risk management and you're looking specifically at ICT? All right, let me give the clarity. In engaging the Auditor General, we indicated that we will be looking at business continuity. Now, business continuity is a broad area. And as auditors, we have the ability to look at our scope and where necessary, make adjustments. And those adjustments could be influenced by various factors. The environment, time, and the resources that you have, for example. Now, we actually zoom into the IT aspect because of the risks that we found at the time based on our risk assessment. So we did not go out of scope. We actually narrowed the scope to be more focused so that we can be more focused. So the scope was narrowed, and as you said last week, but that, when you narrowed the scope, that was not communicated to the AG's department. And that's where I had an issue last week, because in one instance, I think it was one of your colleagues, Mr. Clark, said that it was communicated, however, the AG department said it wasn't. So I wanted clarity whether we're still going back to the original discussion where we were saying that the business continuity plan, while it has many aspects, we were looking specifically at ICT and whether that was communicated. So I need some confirmation whether that was communicated and to whom, to the AG's department. All right. So in answering your question, member, if it is we were going out of the scope, it would be our responsibility to communicate. I didn't say you're going out of the scope. You said you had narrowed the scope. Fine. So what I want clarity on is whether that new scope, quote unquote, was communicated to the AG's department, and if so, who in the department would that be communicated to? And that's where I'm going now. We were still within scope. So based on our protocols, we would be in the process of interfacing with the process owners. And as such, we would not necessarily or required to notify the accounting officer on this adjustment. If it is we are going outside of scope, we would have that responsibility to do so. But let me go further. So the question is, was the scope communicated? All right, so during the actual field work, this would have been communicated to the officer with the responsibility of ICT. In addition to that, we will have the process where we complete the field work and the draft report would have been submitted to, or it was submitted to, the Auditor General. And in terms of dates now, just to make the point, the draft report was issued January 13th. And the exit meeting was convened on January 29th. So we had a period of days wherein if it was not, could be said that it wasn't communicated to the Auditor General within that time, it was indeed included in the draft report. In addition to that, we conducted the exit meeting where it would be, the matters would be further discussed. And again, the procedure is that we would go through the entire draft report, and it covered the IT element, and the discussions followed that. So to answer your question, was it communicated to the department? Yes. So we have the draft report, we have the cover sheet, and we can provide that information to show that it was communicated. And to whom?
All right, thank you. Let's continue. Two more questions. All right, so over to you now, Madam AG. As indicated by Mr. Dillon, just recapping of what happened last week, you said this was the first time you understood that the business continuity plan was narrowed to ICT. Now, Mr. Dillon indicated that the IT officer, that this information of the changing in scope or modification of the scope was communicated to the ICT officer. Can you give some confirmation whether this is in fact true?
Okay, I'm going to allow the IT officer to answer, but I want to also just ensure that I understood what Mr. Dillon said. Mr. Dillon said that he started out and he reported to us, it's actually included in the report, that he's looking at business continuity, and he accepts that business continuity is a broad area. He said, however, whilst in the field, based on a number of issues, he decided to scope down his audit. He says it's not the practice when he's scoping down to communicate that to the head of agency. However, if he's going to go outside the scope, he would communicate that to the head of agency. So he, in fact, accepted that he did not communicate to the head of agency a reduction in his scope. That, as far as I'm concerned, conflates with the position that I shared with the committee last week. As it relates now to his communication with the process owner, I have beside me the director of IT, who would have worked directly with the auditor assigned for that area. But before I turn over to Mr. McNeil, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask you for 5 minutes to step out to come back in. So I'm going to ask Marlon Macadam, Deputy Auditor General, just to sit in my seat while I take a little break.
No problem. Mr. McNeil.
Good afternoon, members.
Yes,
Good
go ahead,
afternoon,
Mr.
team. So, during our discussion as it relates to the scope of the audit, an internal control questionnaire was given. highlighting questions to be answered.
I'm not hearing. I can't hear so well, so could you speak a bit louder?
Internal control questionnaire. An internal control questionnaire, sorry about that, was given for me to provide responses to pertinent questions as it relates to the audit.
So,
it keep on, I dropped that.
So, yeah. So, Mr. McNeil, just to be clear on what I'm asking, Mr. Dillon clearly indicated that it was communicated that there was a slight modification in the scope, or I shouldn't say scope, there's a particular element of the business continuity plan that he wanted to focus on, and that was communicated to yourself. So I'm trying to get confirmation whether you're in receipt of such communications.
Well, I wouldn't have received an email.
You would not?
No, I don't have an email indicating that. But
oh, you don't have an email?
No, what I do have is an internal questionnaire that was given to me to answer questions.
Okay. Mr. Dillon, I have to come back to you just a minute. How was this new information communicated? Because Mr. McNeil is saying it wasn't through emails.
My colleague spoke to an email. All right, so I cannot confirm at this time that it was in fact an email that would have communicated the change in the scope. But what I would say is I'm actually...
Point of order, Chair. Can the Chief Internal Auditor consult, because the last time they had communicated, so can the Chief Internal Auditor consult and give us a better answer?
So, reference was made to an ICQ, internal control questionnaire, that the auditor would have asked the department's representative to complete. Now, that ICQ that I'm looking at right now, it has business continuity / disaster recovery technology plan as the heading. And the very first question was, is there an approved business continuity plan for the department? Now, based on a business continuity plan, one of the features is that if it is effective, all members should be aware of it, especially if you're a senior officer. So when we observed, or we were told, based on the ICQ, that the department did not have a business continuity plan, that's when we adjusted the scope. It also influenced us adjusting the scope because there were some IT documents that could allow us to look at the IT elements. So let me be clear. The scope was adjusted based on the information we received from the IT director, who is a senior officer, and based on our own risk assessment, we found that IT was a critical area for the department. So instead of looking at nothing, we focus on the IT.
All right, thank you. That is clear, but what I'm trying to get at is how was it communicated to the AG's department that whilst you presented a disaster risk management plan, we really want to
narrow the scope down to, or narrow the investigation or the inquiry to ICT. So I'm still trying to ascertain how was that communicated, whether it was via telephone call or whether it's via email or a letter. How was that communication done?
So your question is, prior to the issue of the draft report, how was it communicated?
Correct, because it would be prior to the draft report that you would have discovered that ICT is what you really want to look at, and you would have communicated this to the AG's department for them to provide information for this audit. So I want to know, how was that communicated? Because you did indicate earlier that it was communicated to the ICT officer.
All right. It was verbally told in the interview process, during the interview process.
All right.
To the
which one of the interview process? Because remember, you had
the questionnaire when he was administering the internal control questionnaire.
Do you know the date of this questionnaire administration? So while you look for the date, I'm going to go back to Mr. McNeil and continue my line of questioning. So, Mr. McNeil, on the administration of the questionnaire, the ICQ, as it is referred to, do you recall being informed that the scope has been changed from the entire disaster risk management / business continuity to ICT?
Well, I can't definitively recall. What I can say, I was given the ICQ.
Repeat that?
I can't definitively recall that being said to me, but what I can relate to you is I was given the internal control questionnaire to provide responses.
Right, but what you're trying to establish, Mr. McNeil, because there is some dissonance in the discussion from last week, and I appreciate you weren't here, because the AG indicated that she wasn't aware that the scope for the business continuity plan had changed. So I am trying to establish now, where did that process broke down? Because the internal auditor clearly stated that they communicated verbally to you that it has changed. And I wanted to go back to Mr. Dillon and ask whether something of this magnitude, would you normally communicate verbally or would it be done in writing? That is a question, and if you have the date now, that I can kind of finish up my questioning.
All right, so I actually have the information here. I'm looking at the thread of emails. Email sent 28th of August 2019. Mr. McNeil sent this email to Mr. Clark, and in this email, he had attached some documents, the documents that we referred to earlier, and it included responses / update to system documentation and AUGD's business continuity ICQ. So he submitted his responses to the ICQ. In a line in his email, that's the director, he indicated that, and I'm quoting, as indicated to you verbally, Okay, so that's the date when we receive the responses from the director. That's 28th of August 2019, when we received the formal responses to the ICQ.
Right. So what I'm trying to establish, as you know, Mr. Dillon, is at what point was it communicated to Mr. McNeil that you're now narrowing the scope to ICT, right? And I'm still not hearing the mode of communication, how that was done. I know a questionnaire was filled out. You said it was mentioned verbally. Mr. McNeil is saying he, because of memory, cannot recall. So the other question is, for something of this nature, would the internal auditor relay such information verbally or in writing?
And I am seeing where it is a combination of verbal and writing. Let me go back to his email. That's the one I just quoted. In a line, the director indicated that, as indicated to you verbally, to the auditor, we are currently working on an information security policy, which at this time will not be forwarded, as it is still in the infancy stage. So while this does not clearly indicate that he was told, we were requesting documents that were aligned to the IT side of the operation.
So, Mr. McNeil, my colleagues are saying it's one, so I'm going to kind of finish off on the question now. So, based on the email thread, do you at any point recall that the scope was narrowed or modified to look at ICT? Because in your email, you did indicate that...
No, as I said earlier, the scope wasn't relayed to me. There was a shift in the scope. The ICQ was sent. However, the email that Mr. Dillon made reference to was me sending all the IT-related documents to Mr. Clark. And I sent to Mr. Clark 3 documents outside of the ICQ and the system documentation. The 3 documents that were sent were the IT strategic plan for 2019-2022, the ICT data backup strategy, and our IT policy. Those were the documents that were attached along with the ICQ and the system documentation sent to the auditors.
All right. So clearly, I cannot establish at this moment how the modified scope was actually communicated to the AG's department for an appropriate response. But I'm going to go over to you now, Ms. AG. Mr.
Remember,
Dillon,
Wilson,
yes?
just to say, we are 2 minutes past 1, and
yes,
we're getting a wrap-up signal. So
okay, yes, Chair. Thank you. So, Ms. AG, on January 13th, a draft copy of the report was sent. And in that draft report, did you get a chance to examine it? That's the first question. Or did you receive a draft copy on January 13th?
Yes, but I was on leave at that point in time. So that is the report that would constitute, or I would say form, the agenda for the exit interview, which was held on the 29th. So, of course, I would have reviewed it at that point in time, though I did not.
At which point you would review it? Would you have reviewed it because you're on leave?
I would review it when I return to office, which is on the 27th of January.
Okay, so, all right, thank you. So that means on the 27th of January, you would have seen the draft report indicating that the scope has now changed to ICT.
The draft report did not indicate a change in scope. It kept the original objective of business continuity. And Mr. Dillon actually admitted to the fact that he did not report to me that there was a change in the scope.
Right, so Mr. Dillon just indicated that in the draft report it was clearly outlined that the scope has now been changed, modified to ICT.
Mr. Chairman, through you, in the draft report, as you will see what is in the final report, the objectives of the audit says business continuity. There is no qualification. Well, let me take back that word. There is no modification of business continuity or what element of business continuity. We knew that he was looking at the ICT element. I just did not know that he was confined to ICT.
Can I have a follow-up? No, hold on. No, members, we are at 5 minutes past 1. All right, we're going to have to come back next week, members. So I want to ensure that we give the Parliament enough time to continue to prepare for 2 o'clock. So could I have a motion for the adjournment? And we, members, the AG's team and the Ministry of Finance, we're going to continue next week, Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
I need to speak to you outside because I have to cancel some appointments.
Between April 16 to 23, Jamaica recorded the second largest weekly percentile jump in COVID-19 cases within the Caribbean. But how are our medical personnel and facilities being prepared to handle the surge in cases? We spoke with Dr. Andrew Manning, President of the Medical Association of Jamaica, to learn more. So, Dr. Manning, let's jump right into the discussion. Recently, Prime Minister Andrew Holness indicated that Jamaica would not handle a surge in the spread of COVID-19. So, firstly, could you explain to our viewers what a surge in numbers look like and what does that mean for our healthcare system?
All right, so a surge refers to an increase, a dramatic increase in the numbers of cases of persons who get the disease. Now, most people with the disease will have a very mild form of the disease, but a certain percentage, 10 to 15%, will get a moderate or severe form of the illness. And those persons would need to be treated in hospital. So that's where the problem lies. If you have a large enough number of persons getting the illness and a large number of persons in a short time requiring in-hospital care, the healthcare facilities will be overwhelmed. So the aim is to try as much as possible to slow the rate of spread of the disease through the country, or to what we refer to as flattening the curve. It depends on what you call a large influx, because it varies depending on the percentage of persons who actually get the illness at one time. As has been stated publicly, the Ministry of Health, the government, has aimed and I think have been able to double our ventilator capacity. So I think we're going to have in the region.
It was reported that persons who had recovered from the virus in South Korea had become reinfected. Is it that COVID-19 is now